See, we get back to what was wrong inside of me. There was a longing for intimacy with the divine. That's it. And without that, I'm going to try to fill it with something else. And I can fill it with work, or I could fill it with sex, or I could fill it with money, or whatever. But it's not going to satisfy. The only thing that satisfies is the inside and the outside are matching. And if you haven't gone deep in the inside, there's nothing to match with. So that's why the meditation is so important.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Welcome to uno más episode of Sober Speak. Get ready for some additional audio gold coming at you. This is episode number 202, Dose Zero Dose, with Father Bill W. And we are glad you are here. But first things first, this episode right here, right now, is coming at you and brought to you by, sponsored by, if you will, Maria and Michelle and Anna. Do you know what Maria and Michelle and Anna did? Well, let me fill you in. They went to our website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donate tab and they made a contribution. Thank you so much, Maria and Michelle and Anna, for your contribution. This episode is coming right out to ya. I, John M., just another bozo on the bus, will be the chairperson for this meeting between meetings. And yes, I am generally speaking, well, not even generally speaking, I think 100% of the time, I am the chairperson. In this particular scenario, we do not rotate leadership. Maybe someday I'll get somebody else in here to guest host for me, but nonetheless, I will be the chairperson for this meeting between meetings. And guess what? I am truly honored and privileged to serve all of you listening in. So take a seat, if you will, around this virtual table and let's get spun up. Remember now, no matter who you are or what your past like, you are welcome here. It is an open table to all, and we are glad you are here. So let me give you a little insight about what is going on around me right now. So I am in the studio, which is basically just the guest bedroom upstairs. I am in the studio recording the podcast, and my wife is behind me in a bathroom that is connected to the studio, and she told me to stay out of the bathroom because, how do I put this? It's not going to get gross with her. It's okay. So she was giving our bearded dragon named Charlie, which is a she. It's a long story there. She was giving our bearded dragon a bath, and apparently, and why you have to give bearded dragons baths, I don't know. That's my wife keeps up with all that. But anyway, the lovely Mrs. M was giving him a bath, a bath, and the bearded dragon has a tendency to get relaxed when they are in the bath. And guess what? The bearded dragon just pooped all over the place, and the smell was not the most pleasant. From what I understand, my olfactory senses would not soak it up in a pleasant way. Am I explaining that correctly? Probably not, but you get the idea. So anyway, that's just a little scene that we have going on here. But yes, being the committed podcaster that I am, decided to go ahead and record anyway. And my daughter actually came in at the same time, and she held her nose and she said, "Stay out of there, Dad." Anyway, it's life with the bearded dragon Charlie. And we also have a couple of other little reptiles. Well, one's a reptile. We have what is it called? A chameleon. It's my daughter's. The chameleon's name is, I call her Rango, but they don't, like the movie Rango, but they don't like it when I call her Rango. Her real name is Emmy or Ellie. I think it's Emmy. So anyway, Emmy's in there. She's a chameleon. And then the third animal that we have in the household, just in case you're counting and are curious, is a mini hamster, tiny hamster. I mean, it is really, really tiny. And that little munchkin's name is Cookie. As my wife and my daughter call it Cookie Bean, but I don't go down that route. I just call it Cookie. And you're probably wondering, why don't we have actual animals? Well, I guess those are actual animals, but you get the idea. Like a lot of people have cats and dogs and things like that. Well, me and my son are highly allergic to the cats and dogs, so this is what we have settled on in our household instead. All right, that's enough about what's going on with me. Let's go on to Father Bill W. Part 2. If you didn't catch Father Bill W. Part 1, you don't have to pause your device. I think you can listen to both independently. Go ahead and listen to this one since you've already got it cranked up. And then you can pause your device, look for the episode previous to this, and get Father Bill W. Part 1. But this is Father Bill W. Part 2. We are back again with Father Bill W. We primarily focus on the art and skill, if you will, of something that he teaches, Father Bill W., and he absolutely loves, and it is called two-way prayer and the roots of that practice and how Father Bill actually discovered that practice. Father Bill discusses the connection between the four absolutes from the Oxford group. If you don't know what that is, stay tuned and you will find out. And steps 6 and 7 of Alcoholics Anonymous. Father Bill says he works only 3 steps today, and he'll explain what he means by that. And there's so much more on this episode. Ladies and gents, without further ado, please welcome Father Bill W. Enjoy, and I will have plenty listener feedback on the end of this. Enjoy. Okay, everybody. So today we are sitting here one more time with Father Bill W. And for those who did not hear our episode last time, this is not the Bill W. who actually started the organization. He's nodding his head and smiling. No. This is Father Bill W. So Father Bill W., why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date, if you would, and tell people where you live in this great land of ours.
Yeah, I'm an Episcopal priest. I'm sober since December 27th of 1972. and living just south of Austin, Texas, in a little town called Buda.
Buda, Buda, Texas.
Yes, yes.
Not Buddha.
Not Buda. You have to be very careful. That's how they spot the tourists.
And I do want to talk about one thing real quick. Before we started recording, I noticed Bill reaching down and opening up a door, and he let his what is that? You have a dog there coming in the room?
Yeah,
right?
she's 15. She's devoted to me. My wife makes note of that often. Where I go, she goes.
And
the dog, not my wife. The dog.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said you noted that when she does snore, it does not come through on the recordings.
No,
right?
we've tested it. I was very nervous the first few times she'd come in here and start sawing Z's. I said, "Oh my God, there goes this podcast," And but the microphone is very sensitive, so it's doesn't seem to pick up the snores. It's good.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we chatted about the last time we got together. And as you know, we wanted to come back, spend some more time kind of fleshing out some areas that we didn't get to go into. We really just kind of got into your story, the first part of your story. But, as you said on the beginning, you've been sober since 1972, which for those trying to figure it out in their head, that is 48 years, which is... God bless you. All right. I always hate to say congratulations to people because to me, congratulations feels like, I don't know.
No.
Yeah, it's just not the right word.
Yeah. Lucky you. Somebody's pulling for you up there. That's good.
But last time we got together, and you can go back and listen to Bill's first episode, Father Bill W. But he talked about his what he called pilgrimage from Detroit to La Jolla, California, which I liked. It was basically a hitchhiking experience, right? Yeah. Going from one point to another. What's the difference between hitchhiking from one point to another and having a pilgrimage?
Well, it's all in your mind, I suppose. It was intentional. It was prayerful. I met some amazing people along the route. It was quite profound. A pilgrimage. It's one of the spiritual practices, really, that you're going somewhere, and in the going, you're meeting God along the way. You're much more open to the environment, to the surroundings, and it's as important as the destination. So yeah.
Yeah, but for those listening at home, I don't know if nowadays I would suggest you go out and start hitchhiking from Detroit to La Jolla, but what the heck, it's a different time and a different world. But there's still many ways to have a pilgrimage.
Absolutely. All
right, so we talked about that. We talked about your wall that you hit when you came to being 20 years 20 years sober. And then what I was going to next is we talked about the story of the 5 M's, and you may want to recount that on this particular episode. You don't have to, but we also talked about the Oxford group. So we never really got to flesh out the ideas, which I know are passions of yours. By the way, I didn't talk about it on the last episode, at least during our time together. I'm sure I'll put it in the introduction and such, but you have a website and a podcast, and I want to point people to that. Usually we'll do it on the back end, but I just want to make sure people know about it. Why don't you tell folks about what you have out there if they can go access?
Well, the website is called Two-Way Prayer, TWO, Two-Way Prayer. And the podcasts are Father Bill W. You can get them just about anywhere. And I do workshops. I started doing this two-way prayer practice once I learned about the Oxford group at 20 years sober. And it changed my life. and it changed my understanding of the 11th step, and gave. I was never very good at prayer and meditation, and 20 minutes in the lotus position or such, it just wasn't my style. So I did the usual, I would read the 24-hour book and say some prayers and have my coffee and cigarettes in the early days, though those are gone, long gone, and drink 25 cups of coffee and wonder why I can't sleep, That was early sobriety. But this opened doors for me. And so my guidance, because that's what you receive in two-way prayer, is guidance, and particularly guidance for where's God leading you in your life? What is he calling you to do? And that's how I became a priest. I had been in the Jesuits and felt a calling to priesthood. I was going to monasteries for retreats, and I met I was at an Episcopal monastery in California, Holy Cross up in the mountains of Santa Barbara, and I met the abbot actually at an AA meeting. I ran into him at a meeting, and he said, "Well, he didn't know I was there, and I didn't know that he was an abbot." And we just started talking, and we became friends. And he said, "You have a calling to be a priest, And I said, it goes really deep. I mean, when I was 6 or 7 years old, I was, or I guess a little older than that, I was an altar boy, and I was stealing communion from the sacristy and playing mass. Other kids were out playing football. I was playing mass. I mean, my pathology, John, is very deep. I'm a very sick man, and so I had joined the Episcopal Church by that point, and because I had a wife and 3 kids, and while the Jesuits were liberal, they weren't that liberal that that was going to work. So I spoke to the bishop. I said, I don't feel called to regular ministry, but I do feel called to help alcoholics and addicts, and particularly with this thing on two-way prayer. And so that was kind of how it all began for that point. So my last 28 years in sobriety, I've been practicing this form of meditation and prayer that they did in early AA and in the Oxford group, and my guidance has been to get this out to people in 12-step fellowships. So that's why the website. That's why the workshops. That's what I'm charged to do.
Okay, so let's talk about your first exposure to it and kind of I remember you had talked in the last episode basically about you came across that gentleman who was a historian in AA, or a literary historian.
Yeah, an archivist.
Archivist, thank you.
That's right.
And he helped to change your life by giving you exposure to these various, the history. And through that history, I guess in the 5 absolutes, you came across two-way prayer. So connect all the dots on that for me, if you would.
Well, I'm a reader. I was a history major in college, taught history, and so I dug into this stuff. And as I dug, I felt fulfilled, and I felt led to go. I kept coming across this two-way prayer. It would be mentioned here, be mentioned there, but there wasn't an exact way to do it. It was somewhat vague, but it was done, and it was the heart and soul of the transformational process. So
let me make sure I understand. When you said you were coming across it, does that mean you were coming across the reference to that they did that back then?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it was in this book and that book, and I mean, it was central, and I was a pretty serious AA guy, I mean, I said I knew about the Oxford group, knew about Frank Bookman, a little bit of the history, but this two-way prayer thing, didn't really get that. And so I started doing it. I started practicing it. I didn't tell my wife what I was doing because she'd probably have me committed, But excuse me, dear, I'm going to go listen to God for next half hour. So just me and the dog, yeah, but I started it, and I heard the voice. I heard the voice. And in my Jesuit training, they had talked about using imagination in prayer, and that's several hundred years old. But to allow your imagination to enter into your prayer life, and that is what I think this process is about. It's not listening to the ego; it's listening to the other. And the big book says the great reality is within. I believe that, well, where within? Not in your liver so much as in your mind, particularly in the unconscious, I believe. So it is allowing the unconscious to become conscious. Now, I also did a lot of reading about Carl Jung, who played a very important role in the beginnings of AA. And we have the correspondence between Wilson and Jung, which were very, very important. And so Jung has this thing called active imagination, which he said was actually more powerful than dream work. And over the course of time, I think that's in effect what two-way prayer really is. It's allowing our imagination to take over for a period of time. In the Eastern tradition, you go towards nothingness. Well, in this tradition, you go towards a voice inside. Jung called it the self with a capital S. And some refer to that as the Christ consciousness, the Buddha consciousness. It's that true self which resides within us, and it has business with us. It has work for us to do, and in this process, you are finding out what is it that God is asking of you. In your life, in your day, and that's what they were doing. They were guided. They were seeking God's guidance in their daily activities, in their life's work, in the needs that they had, and they accessed that through this prayer process and wrote down the thoughts that came to them. And they would call them luminative, like light, luminative thoughts. They shine. You look at this one and, what is this? Where'd this one come from? So anyway, I've been doing that for many years. I did it by myself for 10. And then a friend of mine called, asked what I was doing. And I told him, and he said, well, teach me how to do it. So I did. And then we got together once a week, and he shared his quiet time writings, his two-way prayer with me, and I would share my two-way prayer writings with him. And I really saw it change him very dramatically. See, we get back to what was wrong. What was wrong inside of me? Well, there was a longing for intimacy with the divine. That's it. And without that, I'm going to try to fill it with something else. And I can fill it with work, or I could fill it with sex, or I could fill it with money, or whatever. But it's not going to satisfy. The only thing that satisfies is if the inside and the outside are matching, And if you haven't gone deep in the inside, there's nothing to match with. So that's why the meditation is so important. That's why they said it was more important than the meetings in the beginning, Well, I first came across that quote, and that sounded like absolute heresy, but it's not. It's not heresy. It's what brought about the transformation was this inner work of connecting at the deepest level with the reality that is within. Now, it takes work, it takes commitment, it takes a pen and a pencil, a paper. So anyway, I did it and it changed my life. So
we will be continuing our conversation with Father Bill W. in just a moment. Just a reminder, you were listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the World Wide Web as soberspeak.com. There you will find approximately 200 or so other episodes you can listen to for free. You can also find the donate button on our website, which you can use only if the Spirit moves you to do such. Please keep in mind this is a podcast funded by you, the listener. Sober Speak is a self-supporting organization through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. Now back to Father Bill W. All right, so
well, you didn't warn me about the no controversy. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I like it. We do talk about a lot of things on this podcast that, kind of make people think and make people kind of come up with their own.
Yeah.
You can come up with your own point of view. You can. It's just like an AA meeting. Take what you want and leave the rest behind. And I'm very good with that. Okay, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you about, right in the beginning there, you talked about hearing the voice.
Yeah.
And a voice inside.
Right.
And the self with a capital S and all those sorts of things. So,
right.
I understand what you're saying, right? It's this gut, and when I go through a decision making process, Father Bill, I do the exact same thing. I get inside. I kind of go with two different decisions, which way I need to go. One gives me peace, one does not, and I go through all that, right? And I completely understand what you're talking about. But there are going to be people that are listening to this and go, "What do you mean, like the voice inside? Do you actually hear a voice?" So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah. Two thoughts come to mind. One is when people push me on this, and I get it a lot, I ask them, do you have a critic who lives inside of you? Do you have a voice that speaks to you, who says terrible things to you? Now, does it come in words? Sentences, tell me about it. And everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. So this is kind of how the mind works. I remember I was in therapy, and a therapist said to me, Bill, if someone said to you the things you say to you about yourself, what would you do to him? And I said, I'd kill him. And he said, good morning. Good morning. I mean, there's your alcoholism. There's the alcoholism speaking to me, in that form. Well, there's another voice that's honest, kind, unselfish, loving. We call it the God voice. But I'm as content with agnostics and people who are not practicing religion, and there's many in our 12-step fellowships, who call it by other names. But it's the sacred that resides within us. And we can be in touch with that. That's what's so important. We can be in touch with that. And Jung said that thing that is within wants to be in touch with us. Wants to be in touch with us. So we talk about intuition. I mean, the big book says, we will intuitively know. Well, where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
It's from this center, this divine center that resides within each of us. And we want to get in touch with it. And we want to benefit from it. And we want to communicate with it. And what an empty prayer life I had for many years. I was talking and got nothing back. Nothing. Well, I get stuff back now. In the 24-hour book that I had sobered up on, the meditations in that book, what are they? They are the writings of two women in England who were doing two-way prayer. That's what they are. Well, people have no problem reading that. But what are we doing? We're reading somebody else's meditation. Well, why do that? Why not do your own? And listen to the voice. I do workshops a lot and teach people how to do the practice. It's pretty simple. At the end of it, we get 20, 30 people we have time for it. And everybody hears the voice. Everybody hears the voice. It's in us, it's in us.
So let's talk about that workshop a little bit, or just in general, what you said, what two-way prayer is all about, some of the mechanics of it, right? We know, I guess the ultimate goal is you want to hear the voice inside for your own self, right?
The ultimate goal is to do God's will.
Okay.
The ultimate goal is to do God's will.
And by hearing the voice, that leads you into God's will. And
it's right. It's going to give you the guidance, the particular guidance that you need.
Okay, so what is the workshop all about then? Well, can you give kind of
when I do the workshop, it's usually about 2.5 hours, and it's I give the history so that I ground this work historically in the Oxford group and in early AA with lots and lots of references to that, so that they know this is not something I'm bringing in out of California. I didn't pick it up in La Jolla when I was out there. It's not crystals and that sort of thing. It's what they did, and I want them to know that. I want them to know that when Bill Wilson wrote the 12 steps, he was doing it in a quiet time session, asking for God's guidance, and then picked up the pen and began to write. Mm. And he talks about it. It was almost as if it wrote itself. And so, there's a classic example of the process. Quotes from Sam Shoemaker, who was his spiritual mentor. Wilson wanted Sam to write the steps, and he said, no, an alcoholic should write them. But they took the Oxford group process that had never been really written down, and he formulated it in a way that sneaky alcoholics would have a hard time getting around it. Mm-hmm. So he wanted to kind of pin them down. This is what we did. Well, it is kind of what they did. But they didn't do it mechanically. They did it more organically. And I think there's a blessing to the 12 steps, and I think there's a bit of a curse to them as well. And the curse is that we can make them mechanical. We can make them mechanical. A woman some years ago, a sweetheart, but she sent me a 12-step rosary. And I said, oh my God, here we go. Now I do the 12 steps mechanically on my beads. Mm-hmm. It's a process. It's a process you're supposed to go through. It's not a set of words you're supposed to worship. Do you do the process? Are you living it? I'll give one more heresy. The only 3 steps I work today are the last 3 steps. 10, 11, and 12. They're the only steps I work. And a lot of the old timers, I get validation for that. That the steps are not to be gone through over and over and over again. You know, if you're living 10, 11, and 12, and you've done the very best you can on 1 through 9, then all of those spiritual principles and practices are going to become alive for you in 10, 11, and 12. I mean, you're going to continue to do inventory. You're going to experience a deeper and deeper surrender. Your awareness of the and understanding of God will change. Merton said, if it doesn't change in every 5 years, you're not working. You know, you're not growing. Yeah, to me, the two-way prayer in a quiet time session, which is spiritual reading and other forms of prayer, and if someone does yoga, incorporate that. If someone does journaling, incorporate that. If someone does centering prayer, you can incorporate that. But save 5 minutes for listening to God and seeing if God has guidance for you for that day, for your life, for things that are troubling you. And begin writing that down. They weren't stupid people. They would check, is it honest? Is it pure? Is it unselfish? Is it loving? If it's not, you can throw it out. Dr. Bob said something important. I think he said, it's if it's a choice between what's right and what's wrong, you don't need guidance. You need a conscience. But if it's a choice between what's right and what's right, that's when you need guidance.
It's called wisdom too.
Yeah.
So take me through an actual two-way prayer, what you do during a two-way prayer session between you and God. How long does it last? Is there some
5 to 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. I mean, I sit generally for a half hour to an hour. Most of that is in reading and sometimes just in silence, sometimes just sitting. But then I pick up the pen. And what I have done is I really incorporate 10, 11, and 12. So I take my inventory briefly, in the morning. And I look, is there some disconnection between me and another person? Is there fear, anxiety, anger? Is there a disconnect inside or outside? I look, I feel, I watch. One of the old timers said, if you don't watch, you won't know what the hell to pray for. Oh, I love that. And so it's really, if you don't do step 10, you won't know where to go in 11. So you watch to see what's out of whack. Now, I rarely have trouble finding something out of whack, not finding something. It's there.
Right.
So is there fear? What's happening inside, outside? How did I do with that waiter in the restaurant the other day? That came up for me. I was impatient. There were only 3 of us in the restaurant, and this guy couldn't get his attention. Well, I got angry. And I could feel that inside of me. Now, what's that about? It's my grandiosity. Does he have any idea who's sitting here? And this grandiosity, this godlike image that really takes over if we are not careful. I mean, the big book says we have to stop playing God. They're not fooling around with that. They are not fooling around with that. And that's exactly what Jung would say as well. That what we do is we take on godlike characteristics. So you got to watch for that, and then you pray about that. And so I write a short sentence: God, I'm feeling blah blah blah. Please help me.
Okay, so what I've been trying to do in my little pea brain, my little pea spiritual brain, as you're walking through this, is to kind of figure out, okay, what is the differentiators between two-way prayer and like what a lot of people, including myself, would do now? And it sounds to me like it's basically three things: intention, a kind of a deeper reflection, if you will,
Yes.
and then the journaling part that goes along with it. Would I be correct?
Yes, you have to write.
Yeah. So yeah, and I never write. So that is one of the differentiators between what they were doing early on,
Right.
and what. And I don't even know if I can't remember if that is even talked about in 12 and 12 or the Big Book. So now I'm kind of understanding it a little bit better. Makes sense.
Right. Yeah. 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 Well, they didn't see. Wilson did not want AA to be connected in the mind of the general public with the Oxford group. He was trying to differentiate it. So he was taking their ideas. And yet, if he took the four absolutes and if he took the two-way prayer, the guidance piece, people would hear that in the 30s and they say, oh, that's Oxford group. And he wanted to cover that up.
And once again, go through the four absolutes. I think pure love,
honesty,
pure
honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. And
honesty,
purity,
unselfishness,
and love. And these were taken from a Presbyterian missionary by the name of Robert Spear. He wrote a book called The Principles of Jesus. And he took the life of Jesus and he distilled it, if you will, down to four characteristics: that Jesus was absolutely honest, absolutely pure, absolutely unselfish, absolutely loving. And these Frank Bookman took as the standards, the way by which we're going to judge our actions. Is it honest? And Wilson said, this is interesting. Wilson was asked, well, look, so much of the Oxford group was about the absolutes. Where did you put them? He said, I put them in 6 and 7. I put the absolutes in steps 6 and 7. And that, opened another huge door for me in understanding, why they're the shortest things in the Big Book. It's 2 paragraphs, because he didn't want to, I think, go into that in depth. But if you really read that, that's where, we're giving everything. We're giving everything to God. And alcoholics and addicts are extremists. It's been my experience. We're extremists. And if you just say, well, give a little, it's not going to work. But if you say, give it all, that's different. That's worthy of me.
Well, Father Bill W.,
my gosh, we're out of time again, huh?
Yeah, we're out of time again. It's been so good spending time with you. I really appreciate it. Is there anything, I will put the links to your website in the show notes. If there's something else you want me to put it there in the show notes, you just send it over to me. I'm more than happy
the podcast, just the podcast, Father Bill W. People can listen to that. And drop me a line at twowayprayer@gmail.com.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and read once again from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page 164, to close us all out. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Father Bill W., as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, Father Bill, thanks for joining me.
Been my pleasure. Good to get to know you, John.
Thank you again, Father Bill W. Now remember, for those of you listening out here, we do not want you sharing your gossip or your STD, but do share this episode with a friend or family member. It may be just what they need today. All you got to do is pause your little device and hit that little share button and send it over to that friend or family member. Like I said, it may be just what they need today. Now, on to a little bit of listener feedback. Darren writes in, and Darren says, "Hey, John M., thank you for your great work in bringing us this wonderful podcast, and I love your enthusiasm." Well, thank you, Darren. Some people, I don't think, love my enthusiasm. I've heard about this from others, but hey, we are who we are, right? He says, "I have enjoyed being tuned in this past 8 or 9 months or so. Thanks for being of service." Well, you're welcome, Darren. Thanks for listening. He says, "I look forward to checking out Greg P's blog. Sincere regards, Darren G., Santa Rosa, California, for 16 years. Well, what Darren is referring to here is that a listener named Greg P. submitted a blog post. By the way, if you are interested in submitting a blog post, and this could be to give us a review of one of the speakers you've heard on the podcast in the past, it could be something recovery related, just send me an email to John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com, and I will give you some further direction. But Greg P. has a blog post out there on, he actually has a couple of them. Hold on just a second. Let me go real quick. If you go to the website, soberspeak.com, and then you click on blog, and then you'll see something called listener contributions. And Greg P. just put a blog out there, and it's called "Am I Powerless Over Alcohol?" And basically what Greg P. was doing was summarizing steps 1 and 2 by Brian P. A lot of you have heard Brian P. in the past, and he did a fantastic job. So that's what Darren was saying that he was looking forward to reviewing. And he has another one. Who else? Greg P. also he did something on steps 10 and 11 of Alcoholics Anonymous. He reviewed Matthew M., and he did a fantastic job on that one as well. And there's other listener contributions out there as well. So if y'all want to check that out, go to soberspeak.com, click on blog, and then click the listener contributions. But thank you, Darren G. from Santa Rosa, California, for writing in. I appreciate it. Sergio writes in. Oh, I love that name, Sergio. He says, "Hello, John. I'm a 52-year-old Mexican man. I live in Puebla, which is a city next to Mexico City on the south side. I used to be in a group about 3 years ago, and I stopped going there before the pandemic. I would like to go back, but the infections are a bit high in my city, and it's not recommended to be together in rooms in big groups. I listened to your podcast, which I found on Podcast iTunes. I really like listening to your podcast. I just started my recovery only 37 days sober, but I feel very motivated to listening to the speakers. Thank you very much, and let's keep in touch." Well, let's keep in touch, Mr. Sergio. Regards, Sergio M. Well, Sergio, congratulations on your 37 days. And by the time you hear this, let's hope it's a little more than that. And God bless you. Thank you for writing in from Puebla, Mexico, Mr. Sergio. I sure do appreciate it. All right, everybody, that's it for the week. One more in the can. One more in the books. One more episode finished, I guess is what I'm saying. I take this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back next week. You never can tell with any of us. God bless you. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Have a good week. Bye.